So we are actually a microcosm. You know this idea, the ancients had this idea that we're like a little mini world. So we actually have within each one of us, the reason we're able to function is that we have a mini heaven and we have a mini world in us. And these can be depicted as a kind of a sphere, like the top half of the sphere is our mini heaven, and the bottom half of our sphere is our mini world. And each of these has multiple layers to it. So our spiritual mind has 3 layers to it, and opposite to it, our earthly mind, at least in the way that we start out in life, our earthly mind is in the opposite form, where it's almost directly upside down to that, and it has echoing parts on either side, as we see a little later in the show. And so our consciousness is right here in the middle between these two things. And what's strange about this, the way that we come into this world, is that these two are in opposition to each other. They start out naturally oppositional. And so our heavenly mind wants to spiral up. That's where it wants to go. It's trying to go up and up and up toward heaven. But our earthly mind is trying to spiral down and down. By nature, it just spirals down. And so the two are in opposition to each other. You see this in the Bible when it says that the flesh and the spirit are against one another, you know. And this is something that Swedenborg talks about in Divine Love and Wisdom 270. The earthly mind, with everything in it, turns in spirals from right to left. So picturing this going down like this, while the spiritual mind turns in spirals from left to right, going up. So the two minds are turning in opposite directions. What an amazing thing. A sign that evil is resident in the earthly mind, and that on its own, it resists the spiritual mind. Swedenborg says on its own because there is a condition that we can be in where our outer mind is actually cooperative with that spiritual mind. But we're talking about where we start out here. And further, turning from right to left is, by definition, turning downward toward hell. And turning from left to right moves upward toward heaven. So we can picture this with the spiral that we were talking about before. You have these two opposite poles, if you will, like the North and South Pole kind of thing. The Lord is at the top and hell is at the bottom. Those are the ultimate things at the either end of this globe. And then you have feelings on the heaven side. And these feelings are love for the Lord and love for the neighbor. Those are drives or values. And the opposite of them in the earthly mind are love of self and love of the world. These are the 4 loves that we've talked about sometimes in this show. And then those feed into thoughts. On the higher level, they're thoughts of wisdom and intelligence. On the lower level, they're foolishness and irrationality or rationalizations of insane behavior and things like that. And then these come down a step to meet in the middle, if you see what I mean, by these determinations. In other words, actions. They're where feelings and thoughts come together into some sort of actions or words. And the feelings and thoughts on the heaven level are those positive feelings and thoughts that come down into good actions, loving actions, and so on. Whereas on the hell version of it, it comes up towards these evil actions, detrimental things to ourselves and to others. And so it's when we're in the middle, we live in that middle in between these two. When you live in the middle there, it's hard to tell the two apart. This action seems like that action. Is this a good thing? Is it bad? Would it be better if I went home right now or if I stayed here? I don't know. We live in this confusing world in the middle, and we don't really realize that those actions are the very start of a very gentle ramp that either goes down or it goes up. And it's gentle, it's just a gentle curve. But the things of the earthly mind, the way that it starts out in life, they want to lead us downward. And the center to which they're leading is actually a total focus on ourselves, which is really the same thing as hell. Whereas that upward curve wants to go up and up and up until it's drawing us toward the Lord. It's up and heavenwards. It's lifting upwards. So the cool thing is about the middle of these 2 points is that our actions can start us going in the opposite direction. Just by changing our actions a little bit, Then we start our behaviors. We're starting that spiral. Oh, and now our thoughts are starting to change. We're coming into a different perspective. Oh, and now we're having more compassion about other people. We're being drawn upwards through that spiral towards heaven. And these are the centers. Swedenborg says in Spiritual Experiences 2318, when I allowed my imagination to wander freely, imagine being Swedenborg and just watching what's going on in your own mind. So he just allows his imagination to just wander, just whatever I want to think of. Where does it go? He's watching where his mind goes. He says its thoughts were led around in a spiral path from left to right, coming toward the center. That's what spirals do, right? As they get tighter and tighter, at least certain kind of spirals. From this, it is permissible to conclude that such is the flow of endeavors and forces everywhere to their centers, namely by helices from left to right toward the centers, and so everywhere in every least point. There's an order to the whole thing, and it's all going somewhere. We may not be clear when we're going through that, but it's all going somewhere, and we're not just stuck on this downward thing. There is a way to turn it around and get it to go up.